Imagine a vast, once glorious empire now consumed by chaos. Invasions, revolts, and weak rulers had brought Rome to the brink. Barbarians stalked its borders, its provinces were fragmented, and the city that once ruled the world now faced its own collapse. It was the 3rd century, one of the darkest periods in Roman history, but when all seemed lost, one man stood as the last hope: Aurelian, the emperor who not only ruled, but rescued Rome from oblivion. If we now remember the Roman Empire as one of the longest lasting in history, much of that credit goes to Aurelian. His leadership not only restored order, but paved the way for Rome to continue to exist for more than a century. But who was this man, and how did he achieve the impossible? Rome, on the brink of collapse, the crisis few could weather. To understand Aurelian's greatness, we need to visualize the scenario he inherited. The Roman Empire of the 3rd century was far from the stability of its predecessors. The so-called crisis of the 3rd century brought a succession of weak emperors and internal wars that devastated the power structure. Every few months, a new leader ascended the throne only to be assassinated shortly thereafter. The empire was divided. In the west, Roman generals proclaimed their own independent kingdoms. In the east, the kingdom of Palmyra, under the powerful Zenobia, challenged Rome's rule. And in the north, the Goths and other barbarian peoples invaded without meeting adequate resistance. The army was weakened, the economy was collapsing, and confidence in the imperial government had crumbled. If nothing was done, the Roman Empire would cease to exist. And it was into this scenario that Aurelian emerged, a disciplined, tireless, and ruthless commander. Where other rulers had failed to restore order, Aurelian saw the chaos as a challenge to be overcome. His motto was simple: Rome must be strong, no matter the cost. The ruthless leader Rome needed. Unlike many emperors who rose through political influence or noble lineage, Aurelian was a soldier before he was a ruler. Born into a humble family, he built his reputation on the battlefield, not in the halls of the Senate. He was known for his rigid discipline and strategic vision. He made no empty promises, no weak compromises. When Aurelian made a decision, he carried it out without hesitation. His reputation soon spread among the legions. He was a commander who never backed down, who brooked no weakness, and who always found a way to win. And it was with this mindset that he took the reins of the empire. His first step: restore order and unify Rome once again. But before that, he had to solve an urgent problem. Rome's walls were vulnerable. The Aurelian walls, the fortress that saved Rome. Aurelian knew that Rome was no longer the untouchable city it had been centuries ago. Its defenses had become obsolete, and the threat of invasion was real. Unlike his predecessors, who relied solely on past glory, he acted with strategy and pragmatism. This is how the Aurelian walls were born, one of the most impressive defensive structures in ancient Rome. These walls surrounded the city, protecting it like a shield against possible attacks. But they were not just a physical barrier. They symbolized Aurelian's commitment to protecting Rome at all costs. This monumental work completely transformed the dynamics of the city. The citizens, who had previously feared looting and invasion, felt safe again. The army, which had previously fought without a solid base, now had a fortress from which to regroup. But Aurelian was not a man who was content with defense. He knew that to restore Rome, he had to go on the attack, and that is exactly what he did. What came next? The emperor not only fortified Rome, but also rebuilt its identity as a military and political power. He would not accept that the empire would become a mere memory of the past. His next mission? To confront the invaders and consolidate power in his own hands. Can you imagine how a single man managed to reunite a fragmented empire and put it back on track? In the following moments, you will see how Aurelian became Rome's only hope and led campaigns that would change the destiny of the empire forever. Is there anything that has left an impression on you so far? Share it in the comments. Your vision is important. If there is one thing that defines the great leaders of history, it is their ability to overcome adversity from the very beginning. And with Aurelian, it was no different. Before becoming the emperor who restored Rome, he had to prove his worth on the battlefield, growing up without privilege and conquering each step with effort and discipline. His journey began far from the walls of Rome, in a humble region, but one that would shape one of the greatest commanders the empire had ever seen. But what led this young man, born into a family without influence, to rise to the top of the Roman world? How did a simple soldier become the hope of Rome? To answer these questions, we need to go back to his origins and understand how destiny began to shape his legend. Unlike many emperors who were born in palaces, surrounded by wealth and political influence, Aurelian had humble beginnings. He was born around the year 214 AD in a rural village in the province of Moesia, modern-day Bulgaria and Serbia. His father was an administrative officer in a senatorial estate, but his family did not have great titles or connections. These humble origins meant that Aurelian grew up understanding the value of hard work and discipline. Unlike the Roman elite, who saw the army as a political tool, he knew that for a common man, the only way to rise in life was through the strength of the sword. From an early age, he learned to fight, ride a horse, and endure hardship, skills that would later prove essential to his rise. But the Rome of that time was not a place where an ambitious young man could grow up in peace. The empire was in crisis, and the provinces were constantly attacked by barbarian tribes. Aurelian's destiny seemed clear. The army would be his path. As a young man, Aurelian joined the Roman army, an environment where discipline and courage meant everything. Unlike many soldiers who saw military service as a means of survival, he saw an opportunity to stand out. His dedication was unmatched, and he quickly caught the attention of his superiors. In every battle, Aurelian demonstrated skills that few possessed. His fighting style was relentless, fast, aggressive, and precise. Furthermore, his presence on the battlefield inspired the soldiers around him. While others hesitated, he advanced fearlessly, leading by example. It was this attitude that made him rise in rank quickly. It wasn't long before he was promoted to officer, tasked with leading small troops. But it was during the wars against the Goths and Germans that he became a truly important name within the Roman army. In the 3rd century, Rome faced constant invasions on the empire's borders. The Goths, a fierce and strategic Germanic tribe, represented a growing threat, sacking cities and challenging the Roman legions. Aurelian was sent to the front to deal with this threat, and it was at this moment that he showed why he was different from other commanders. While many generals followed predictable tactics, Aurelian was quick and unpredictable. He attacked when no one expected it. His soldiers moved like ghosts in the night. Each ambush was calculated to the millimeter. In one of these campaigns, Aurelian led a decisive attack against the Goths, using a strategy that would go down in history. Rather than confront the enemy head-on, he used their terrain against them, driving the Goths into territory from which they could not escape. Surrounded and with no escape, they were utterly annihilated. This type of victory caught the attention of Rome. Aurelian's name now echoed in the halls of power. He was not just a good soldier, he was a rising military genius. After numerous victories, Aurelian was promoted to commander of the cavalry, one of the most prestigious positions in the Roman army. This position was not given to just anyone. Only the best strategists and field leaders could hold it. As commander of the cavalry, Aurelian further refined his style of combat. He believed that speed was the key to victory. and he trained his troops to be the fastest and most lethal in the empire. His campaigns continued, and each new victory reinforced his reputation as one of Rome's most brilliant generals. But as Aurelian built his military career, something unexpected happened. Emperor Claudius II, who ruled Rome at the time, died suddenly. This created a power vacuum, and when Rome needed a new leader, all eyes turned to Aurelian. Aurelian had spent his life training, fighting, and proving himself to be the best. Now he had a choice: accept the throne or watch Rome fall into chaos. Aurelian's battle against the Goths was much more than a simple clash of armies. It was a true struggle for the survival of Rome and its identity as an empire. At the end of the 3rd century, the Roman Empire was facing an unprecedented crisis. The Roman borders were being constantly invaded, and within its borders, provinces were fragmenting into small kingdoms or taken over by usurpers. The empire seemed to be disintegrating before the eyes of its inhabitants and leaders. In this scenario, the Goths, one of the most powerful Germanic tribes, began to expand their influence into the interior of the empire, posing a threat that could be fatal to Rome. Aurelian, then commander of his legions, was aware that defeating the Goths would not be just a strategic victory, it would be a declaration that Rome was not defeated. He believed that the empire still had strength, but it needed a leader capable of restoring the discipline and greatness that had once defined Rome. Aurelian knew that the confrontation with the Goths would not be easy. They were known for their ferocity, their fighting skills, and their ability to quickly regroup. However, Aurelian was not about to give up. He had a clear vision that the Rome of the future would not be based solely on past victories, but on the ability to reinvent itself in the face of adversity. He wanted to show that Rome still had the strength to defend its borders and restore its unity, something many thought impossible. As Aurelian's troops advanced toward Goth territory, the empire was increasingly fragmenting. Confidence in the Roman legions was being tested. To many, Rome seemed a shadow of its former self. However, Aurelian was not discouraged by this pessimism. Instead, he saw an opportunity to prove that Rome could be restored and that he was the man who could do it. He knew that in order to win the war against the Goths, it was not enough to defeat them in isolated battles. He needed to destroy the foundation of their resistance, slowly chipping away at their strength. The Roman commander knew he needed to be more than just a military leader. He needed to be a strategist, someone who could devise tactics that were both effective and unpredictable. It was at this point that he began to employ one of the most brilliant and enduring tactics of his career, the strategic siege. Rather than simply engaging the Goths in head-on battles, Aurelian opted for a more cerebral approach. He would begin to surround the Gothic forces, forcing them to isolate themselves and lose their ability to sustain their forces. To do this, he would attack their supply routes, cutting off access to food and essential resources, slowly weakening the invaders' ability to resist. At the same time, he would reinforce the Roman fortifications, creating a solid defense that could withstand the Goths' siege and prevent them from consolidating in any key areas. This siege tactic was not simply a matter of isolating the enemy. It was psychological warfare as much as military warfare. Aurelian not only cut off the Goths' supplies, but also sent a clear signal to his troops. We are Rome, and we will not be defeated. This message was essential to maintaining the morale of the Roman legions. Every small victory, every small gain of territory or strategic position was used by Aurelian to further strengthen his troops' belief in the mission. For months, Aurelian and his troops carried out a series of decisive actions that diminished the Goths' forces. The Gothic tribes, though fierce and well-organized, began to feel the effects of this siege strategy. Their warriors were becoming increasingly weak as the Roman forces continued to press them. Aurelian, in turn, kept his troops motivated by reiterating that they were on the right path and that the empire depended on them. He knew that a motivated soldier was far more effective than one who fought merely for the sake of duty. One of the greatest moments of this war was the Battle of Naissus, an epic clash that would become a landmark in the history of Aurelian and Rome. Naissus, an important city located near the Danube, was under direct threat from the Gothic forces. Aurelian's army, already exhausted, was preparing to face a considerably larger Gothic army. Many believed that the battle was a losing one. However, Aurelian did not hesitate. He took advantage of siege tactics, pressing the Goths from all sides, creating an impenetrable siege. When the confrontation finally took place, Aurelian's forces displayed impressive resilience and coordination. The Roman forces, although numerically inferior, were better organized and more motivated. The battle was brutal, but in the end, Aurelian's legions managed to defeat the Goths, leaving an indelible mark on Roman military history. The victory at Naissus was not just a military defeat for the Goths, it was a strategic humiliation for them. Aurelian had defeated an army that seemed invincible and, in doing so, further cemented his reputation as a military leader. The Roman Empire, under his leadership, began to see a possible recovery. But Aurelian's work was not done. He knew that, although the victory was significant, the empire was still fragile and needed more to be restored to its former glory. What do you think of this epic battle? Do you think Aurelian made the right decision to use the strategic siege, or could he have chosen another path? Leave your opinion in the comments and let's continue discussing how the history of Rome was written by these great leaders. In the next chapter, we will explore Aurelian's rise to the throne and how he consolidated his power in an impressive manner. Don't miss it. When Emperor Claudius II, also known as Claudius the Gothic, died unexpectedly in 270 AD, the Roman Empire was plunged into a state of profound uncertainty. With the empire constantly under attack from external forces and torn apart by internal revolts, Claudius's death was not only the loss of a leader, but a threat to the political and military balance of Rome. The Roman Senate was divided, trying to find a solution to the power vacuum that had now arisen. At that time, Roman politics was a game of risk and intrigue, where power was decided not only by legitimacy, but by military strength and the ability to maintain control over the legions. In this context, Aurelian emerged, a military commander who was not from the traditional elite of the empire, but who, through his strategic skill and unwavering loyalty, earned the trust of the legions. He knew that his rise to power would not be easy and that it would require more than just winning battles. He would need to solidify his position decisively, showing the empire and the Senate that he was the leader Rome needed to survive the crisis. Aurelian wasted no time. When Claudius II died, the Senate had its own preference. Claudius' brother Quintillus was seen as a legitimate choice. However, the Roman legions were not concerned with blood feuds, but with the survival of the empire. They wanted a leader who was strong, capable of commanding with authority and restoring order. And it was at this point that Aurelian's name came to the fore. Not only did he lead wisely, but he had also proven himself to be an unbeatable warrior in battles against invaders and in campaigns to unify the empire. Aurelian's proclamation as emperor was an act of courage and strategy. He knew that his accession would not be accepted easily by the Senate, but his true power base lay in the legions. When Aurelian's troops decided to support his candidacy, he was proclaimed emperor by the soldiers without hesitation. What followed was a series of maneuvers that quickly consolidated his position and secured his reign. In a decisive move, Aurelian had Quintillus eliminated, demonstrating his willingness to allow no challenge to his power. This act, although brutal, made it clear that he was in control and that Rome would no longer have room for uncertainty. The fact that Aurelian was proclaimed emperor by the legions rather than the Senate was a reflection of the new political and military dynamics of the Roman Empire. This was a period in which leaders were chosen not only by the city's elite, but by the soldiers themselves, whose votes of confidence were essential for any ruler who wished to remain in power. Such ascensions were not uncommon, but Aurelian, unlike other emperors, knew how to consolidate his authority ruthlessly, ensuring that Rome was governed with stability and determination. But what was most impressive was the way in which Aurelian immediately took the reins of the empire. He was not tied down by politics and the games of the Senate. He was a man of action, and his first task as emperor was to restore order and security to the empire, especially on the borders, where Rome was constantly under attack. Aurelian implemented a series of military and administrative reforms, restoring discipline to the legions and restructuring the way resources were distributed to strengthen Rome's defenses. He also set about restoring economic stability, which was essential to the empire's survival, especially in times of war. One of Aurelian's first steps toward consolidating his power was the construction of a series of fortifications around Rome, known as the Aurelian Walls. These walls were built not only to protect the city from external invasions, but also to symbolize the empire's renewed strength. They were a mark of his authority and a statement that Rome was ready to resist even the most imposing threats. The construction of the Aurelian Walls was a monumental project, requiring resources and relentless leadership to ensure that the workers were kept in line despite the hardships. Moreover, Aurelian did not limit himself to strengthening external defenses. He also paid great attention to the internal cohesion of the empire. In an age marked by division and fragmentation, Aurelian worked tirelessly to reunite the provinces that had fallen away from Rome. His vision was of a united empire in which the different regions, with their distinct cultures, felt part of a single whole under the central authority of Rome. He also faced the task of defeating the usurpers who threatened the empire, using his military skills to reconquer the regions and reinforce the loyalty of the legions. Aurelian's rule was a true reconstruction of the Roman Empire, both in terms of security and unity. He was not just a military leader, but a ruler who understood the needs of the empire at a deep level. His reforms and his strategy to unite and protect Rome were essential to restoring the strength that the city needed. However, this restoration of order was not easy, and Aurelian himself had to face unexpected challenges. But like any great leader, Aurelian knew that his mission was only just beginning. He had secured the throne, but the empire was far from secure. His next steps would be even more decisive, and his ability to lead in times of crisis would be put to the test once again. After all, although he had proven his worth as a commander, he would now face greater challenges, including internal revolts and invasions that would test the true strength of his empire. In the next chapter, we will see how Aurelian faced these challenges and how he consolidated his authority, becoming one of the most famous emperors in Roman history. Don't miss it. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to live in this tumultuous period of ancient Rome? What do you think of how Aurelian took the reins of a chaotic situation? Share your impressions in the comments. We want to know what you think. Stay with us, because Aurelian's journey is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what comes next. After his rapid rise to power, Aurelian understood that his main mission was to restore the cohesion of the empire. Rome at that time was divided and weakened, with provinces rebelling and others threatened by external invasions. The idea of unity, which had been the foundation of the Roman Empire, seemed distant. The various regions of the empire were being racked by political crises, and most worryingly, confidence in the central forces of Rome was falling. It would take more than a series of military victories to restore the integrity of the empire. It would require a leader who could bring together not just the soldiers, but also the different cultures, provinces, and forces that comprised it. Aurelian's first major challenge was to confront the usurpers who were taking advantage of the empire's weakness to assert their own sovereignty. The Roman Empire was fragmented into several parts, each under a different leader. There was the Gallic Empire, the Palmyrene Empire in the east, and several other regions that were slipping away from central control. Aurelian knew that the solution lay not just in combating these warring factions, but in restoring confidence in Rome as the capital and center of the entire empire. His first campaign of reunification was against the Gauls, where Emperor Tetricus had established himself as a rival leader. What Aurelian did next demonstrated not only his military skill, but his political cunning. He offered the leaders of the rebellious provinces a path of honorable surrender. He knew that the simple use of force would not bring about a lasting solution. For reunification to be complete, Aurelian needed to ensure that by defeating his enemies, he made them feel that they were being reintegrated, not humiliated. As Aurelian's troops marched into the heart of the Gallic Empire, he made a point of holding a series of negotiations, promising pardon to those who surrendered without resistance. This approach, combined with his immense military strength, led Tetricus's increasingly difficult troops to surrender. In a calculated move, Aurelian offered Emperor Tetricus a path to retirement and safety, ensuring that he would not become a symbol of resistance. Tetricus, recognizing that the cause was lost, surrendered, and the region was quickly reintegrated into the empire. This act not only secured military victory, but also marked a turning point in Aurelian's handling of imperial politics. Meanwhile, in Palmyra to the east, Queen Zenobia posed another major threat to Rome's authority. Under her rule, Palmyra had expanded considerably, taking control of several Roman provinces. She saw herself as a legitimate rival to the Roman throne and believed that the empire was in decline, which provided her with an opportunity to expand. Realizing this, Aurelian knew that the stability of the empire in the east depended on a decisive victory against Palmyra. The campaign against Zenobia was one of the most spectacular in Aurelian's military history. He marched his troops towards the city of Palmyra with impressive speed and force. Aurelian's approach here was more direct, using his traditional strategy of siege and isolation to weaken the Palmyrene Empire. Zenobia's forces, which until then seemed unbeatable, were unable to maintain their supply lines, and before long, the city was surrounded. When Zenobia realized that she had no options left, she tried to flee but was captured, leading to her downfall and the end of Palmyrene's rule over the east. The victory over Palmyra was a crucial turning point in the reunification of the Roman Empire. Aurelian not only defeated Zenobia, but also re-established control over the eastern provinces. This victory sent a clear message to all who still doubted the strength of Rome. The empire was still alive and capable of defending itself, not only against external enemies, but also against those who dared to challenge it from within. But Aurelian was not content with simply winning battles. He knew that true reunification of the empire could only be achieved when its internal elements were restored, and that meant reintegrating the provinces into the Roman system of governance and ensuring that necessary reforms were implemented. He dedicated himself to creating an administration that was more efficient, centralized, and at the same time responsive to local needs. His ability to bring diverse cultures together under one banner was one of the greatest legacies of his reign. During this period, Aurelian also focused on strengthening Rome's infrastructure. He invested in building projects not only as a form of defense, but also as a way to symbolize Rome's strength and continuity. The Aurelian Walls, one of his greatest works, served not only as a point of defense, but as a monument to his vision of a secure and cohesive Rome. These walls were not just physical. They represented the idea that Rome was rebuilding itself, stronger and more prepared for the future. However, despite his internal and external victories, Aurelian was not able to solve all of the empire's problems. The empire still faced serious economic and social difficulties. The reforms he initiated, although crucial, were far from guaranteeing lasting stability. In many ways, the empire's structure was aging, and its future was still uncertain. Aurelian knew that the reforms needed to be continued, but he also understood that his mission extended beyond his own lifetime. What he had built would have to be defended by future generations. The question now is, how would Aurelian deal with the fact that his mission was far from complete? How would he face the challenges ahead, knowing that the empire was still on the brink of new crises? And how would he be remembered by future generations? Every decision Aurelian made would echo far into the future, and the impact of his rule would be felt long after his death. Stay with us, as Aurelian's journey is far from over. What he did to ensure the empire survived over the years to come is something you won't want to miss. What do you think of Aurelian's reforms and his approach to reuniting the empire? Do you believe he was truly able to restore Rome to its former greatness? What part has stood out to you most so far? Let us know in the comments. We want to hear your thoughts.